Thank you, John. And I'm delighted to be here actually to talk about a new framework that we have developed which caters to employability. Now, in Australia, we've tried this out over the last 15 years. It's a new concept. How do we train our students to become good employees? So we talk about employability. And what we did was, as John mentioned, the term work-integrated learning. Now, some of you have heard this word as placements, internships. There are different words that are used. All that it refers to is the transition of a student from university into the workplace. Now, why did we look at work-integrated learning? We looked at work-integrated learning because we found the employers telling us teachers, your students might have the knowledge, but they don't have the skills of the workplace. So, what we are doing today is, sorry, it's a wrong placement. So in work-integrated learning, what I did was, I looked at the 6 research skills in the RSD, and I then adapted it to employability. So we've heard a lot today about people using the RSD, and you are familiar with the research skills. But I'm going to talk to you today about how I managed to modify the RSD to suit the employability. In other words, you can do the same with your subjects. So, no, that's the wrong one. It's got to be the same.
That's okay. Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Sorry about that. So the objective of today's presentation is, objective of today's presentation is to show the connection. Sorry, I need the slides to talk.
Okay, we've just about found it. It's in a different file.
Yeah. No, that's not the one. It's the second one. No, if you go to... No. That's not the one, John.
No.
Oh, dear. Unless there is a... Yes. Yes. Okay, here we are. Right. The objective is to determine how work skills should contribute to employability thinking. Now, the term employability thinking was referred to by the Honourable Minister who came today. He spoke about being open-minded, and others talk about critical thinking, I'm using these words, and asking questions. That's exactly what we do when we introduce the employability skills. Now, the objective here is to determine how work skills will contribute to employability among Pacific peoples in a way that it articulates with, that builds on USP's development of research skills in the curriculum. We were talking about how do we match attributes, how do we match outcomes, graduate outcomes, etc. And this is what we're looking at. So, what I'm going to talk to you is about the work-integrated learning, which I have done, and I'm going to get on to work skills development framework and how we connected the WSD shorthand to RSD, and finally, what is the benefit to people here? People here have already have employment. What we're trying to do is to teach the skills to people who are not getting jobs here in the Pacific. You have already developed your skills, but these are specific skills which we were referring to in terms of developing. Okay, so the first question is, how do you extend the thinking skills of research to the thinking skills required for work? Remember the questions that were posed early this morning was being open-minded. So at James Cook University, we introduced a work skills development framework, similar to the RSD on your table. What we did was, we wanted our students thinking about those 6 skills, similar to what you see there. I will show them to you in a minute, and say, how do you think about it? So the first thing we did in our course was, we introduced a reflective diary. A reflective diary is, let's say you're doing some kind of, you're fishing, right? When you're fishing, you need to write, for example, okay, I caught this fish. What type of a fish is it? And what do I do in terms of preparing this fish? Where do I market it? So you're thinking and you're asking questions. It's not just catching the fish and putting it into the basket, right? That's the kind of employment that there is usually. You send a checkout chick, which means, you go to Woolworths or somewhere, and you get this girl just checking out. Even she should be able to use skills that promote her employability. And this is what I'm going to be talking about, thinking skills they engage. So first of all, we have a reflective diary, which daily, or we say sometimes 3 times a week, they will record under initiative, under problem solving, communication, same 6 skills that are in RSD, which I'll tell you what they were doing. So the whole time, they're having an open mind about what they're doing, and they're thinking about what they're doing. So it's not just doing it, but thinking about it. Then we also introduce a reflective essay based on the diary. So we got the reflective diary that goes through the whole placement, 5 weeks, 8 weeks, it depends. They do a reflective essay, and finally I do an interview with them where I extend their thinking skills. So they're not just doing a job, remember, but they're using a framework, or rather they don't see the framework, but we frame it in terms of thinking skills. Now, if you recall the RSD, you will see, hope I use the right button now, yeah, these are the 6 skills that we're talking about. Embark and clarify. For somebody in a placement, what we want them to do is think about the work you're doing. Before you do the job, we tell them, get onto the internet and find out what is required in your job. Who is there? So you're making inquiries so that when you get into the job, you're comfortable. That's your role, and you've taken the initiative to find out a little bit more about the job. And that's really important in employment, not just walking into a job. Then we have what is called find and generate. This is where you use the right technology, or select the right technology, select the resources, etc. to do your job. And third one, evaluate and reflect. Don't just do the job, but think about lifelong learning, what we could call, right? Where it takes you. Organize and manage would be where you do the job and you think about what effect it will have upon someone else. If you talk to somebody, you should know how to talk to that person and see what effect it has. So you're actually organizing yourself, and you're also mindful of the other people. Now, we can call this, some of these aspects, the affective. It's not just the cognitive skills, but we also emphasize the affective skills. This is basically problem solving, which you know with the RSD, and this is about communicating and listening. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Now, each of those skills, obviously, in RSD leads to curiosity, determination, discerning, harmonizing, creative, and construction. Now, that then is the structure of your research skills. So let's see how this matches now the work skills. So we call in work skills, I have called it initiative. It's embark and clarify. In research skills, you say curious, right? So here we go. These are the terms that I use in terms of the WSD to match the RSD. So this will then give us the work skills development framework. So this is a summary how the 2 frameworks fit together. Now, here are all this is in the paper, which you will be able to read later on in the year. Now, this actually has two facets. Just like the RSD, you've got your skills on one facet and you've got your levels on the other facet. So first of all, we're looking at employability skills. Here we go. The whole concept of employability is based on critical self-reflection. This is the open-mindedness that we heard about this morning. This is about the critical thinking that we heard about this morning. It's all incorporated into the framework. So the questions we ask are this: to find out the initiative, what is my role? Now in RSD, it would be, what is my purpose? Right? So we have adjusted it to suit the employability. And more specifically, what happens with this is students are goal-directed and motivated to embark and clarify the role. So here are the 6 skills, and this is what it means. Okay. This is the RSD pentagon, the famous pentagon that's used in RSD, where you question. So if you're not sure what you're doing, you go back and find out, what is my role? Why am I here? What kind of work am I doing? Then you go to find and generate, which is what do we need, evaluate and reflect. We go like this in a circle, right? But if you're in doubt, you don't know how do we arrange. If you're here and you don't know where to go, you go back there again. So what is my role? Then you go and say, how do we arrange? Now, this is the second aspect, which is levels of autonomy. Same or similar, very similar to RSD. Exactly the same, but in terms of employability, these are the descriptors. Right? This is what we do in terms of employability. We can start, for example, initiative probably very high, could be open-ended, but problem solving, when you start, your placement might be here. So you could be in any of these phases during your placement when you start, and a different place when you finish. So what we do at James Cook University is we measure their pace. What was their pace, what was their level when they started, and I call it pre-placement. When they finished, I call it post-placement. So we have a beautiful curve to see what was their level of understanding of problem solving when they started, what was it when they finished, what was their initiative when they first started, what was it when they finished. I've used it at James Cook University, and currently it's been used in Mexico, Canada, and Thailand. They've adapted the same model. So it's a generic model that can be used anywhere in the world with any subject. So that's the advantage of using a model like this. Now, I'm not advocating that you do use it, but all what I'm saying is it's a generic model that can be used with students who are struggling to get into employment. Or you can use it at a high level. Students who are really good, but they haven't thought about their skills. This is a lifestyle skill that we teach. This is again the levels explained. Highly structured guidance, as you know, and then with self-determined guidance. That's just now this. All this will be in the paper. Okay, have I finished my time? Not yet. Not yet. Okay. So, as a result, we find that students at James Cook University, they're mixed students, geology students, biology, marine biology, planning, environmental science, because I'm in the Faculty of Science and Engineering. And this framework works through all the disciplines, because what we are teaching is a technique. It's nothing specific, and it can be used by anybody. And this has actually, James Cook University is rated as one of the universities with I think, the top rate of employability skills. Not employment, but employability. We've been rated in Australia. So it works for us. I mean, it doesn't mean that all James Cook University students use this. We only use it in science and engineering. And they do get employment, and they know that this particular skill is not just to pass the exam, like doing chemistry or maths. You can study, you pass, you can forget about it. This is for life. John, would you like to add something else?
Thanks, Sue. It struck me that James Cook University is using the Work Skill Development Framework. University of Adelaide is using the Research Skill Development Framework, but neither of our universities are using the other one. Monash University is well on the way to working out how one speaks to the other and how they're not two, so they're not two separate frameworks, but they're actually the same concept, but speaking the language of the context. So research skill development has been appropriate at Monash in a number of faculties and courses, but the language of research, that word, research, doesn't connect when the students go into employment. For the nurses, especially going to the ward, they don't necessarily talk much about research when they're working directly with patients and doctors. And so they're looking at that segue from when research skill development is appropriate, and then when is work skill development a more appropriate terminology. So they've been working the last year and a half or 2 years on how to manage that connection so that there's one overarching framework, and then there's articulations, context-specific ways of expressing these 6 facets and these levels of autonomy in a way that makes sense to that context. That's all we need to say. So maybe you can take questions, sir.
Yeah, sure. Any questions?